After a controversial decision, let Kyle Busch stay in the top 5 after being involved in a collision during overtime of the Ally 400, NASCAR is clarifying its rationale. Only because drivers and fans have reacted outraged that Busch got some kind of favoritism to help him reach playoffs. So, what was even going on, and is this a clear case of favoritism? Ross Chastain wrecked late in the race at Nashville Superspeedway, causing the two-time Cup Series champion to become involved. Busch had to check up to miss Chastain, and in doing so, he smacked the wall. At the moment, Busch was comfortably in the top 5, hoping for his first top 5 result since Dover, which the number 8 team desperately needed. Then Chastain washed up, and Busch was overtaken by a slew of cars, but NASCAR led him to return to the lead before the next restart. It all started off on social media with fans asking why Busch got his position back. Later drivers chipped in as well. Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick had some interesting opinions on NASCAR's decision on Kyle Busch during the Nashville Cup Series race on Sunday. On the Actions Detrimental podcast, Hamlin and Reddick addressed Busch's ranking in the top 5 before a restart, despite being involved in an accident. "I thought that was extraordinary that they put the 8 Busch back up as far as he did," he added, "because he actually hit the wall while he was just trying to avoid the wreck." Reddick said he did not witness what occurred to Busch, but he was not upset with NASCAR's decision. "I missed that one completely," he said. "I saw Ross Chastain wreck. That was the one where I had to check up quite a bit. So I was fighting my own battle to get back where my team believed that I was before the caution. And I saw the 8 go by, right sides ripped off of it, and they gave him his spot back in the honor of consistency, I guess. I benefited from it, so I guess I personally can't really be too upset about it." Hamlin replied, "In the moment, I'm upset at the time because we're taking forever under caution. But like you say, they got so much they've got to process when they're trying to figure out who's running where, who was involved in the wreck, who was slowing down, who was not. It's painful." So why did NASCAR put Kyle Busch ahead of the Nashville Cup Series race? Moving Busch to P4 before a restart was an unusual decision that sparked outrage among fans and analysts. With drivers, fans, and media members all criticizing the decision, Cup Series Managing Director Brad Moran explained Tuesday on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio's The Morning Drive why Busch was put in the top 5 following the incident. "His spots weren't taken away because our rule clearly states that you must maintain a reasonable speed," Moran said during his appearance on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. "And reasonable speed is for what track conditions are at the time. We don't want to encourage drivers to stay on the gas and just kind of, bang their way through. What Busch did was he avoided the incident. We deemed him not involved in that incident. He didn't stop. If he had to stop, he probably would have ended up towards the back of the field, but he was scored in the 4th place position when that caution come out. He didn't get into Ross Chastain or Kyle Larson and made very slight contact with the wall, so we would deem that as not being involved in that incident, and that's why he was able to restart where he was scored." Moran also added some explanation, noting that the order was determined based on scoring loop data and that Busch was placed in the proper position. "That's what was the last loop that the leaders were scored on," Moran added. "So really it comes down to do we determine him involved in that wreck, and we did not determine him involved in the wreck. We determined that he avoided being involved in the wreck." NASCAR's decision to allow Busch to retain his previous position was perplexing at the time. Fox Sports' Bob Pockrass, on the other hand, seemed less concerned. "My thoughts on Busch. I'd say he was involved in incident BC hit wall and had damage, but also can see he maintained a reasonable speed based on track conditions. Close judgment call, so don't view it as a horrible call. Ended up hurting Busch since he ran into out-of-gas Larson," Pockrass wrote about X. Another NASCAR insider is not backing down from his concerns over NASCAR's decision on Kyle Busch during Sunday's race at Nashville Superspeedway. Jeff Gluck of The Athletic went to X and responded to Cup Series Managing Director Brad Moran's statement about Busch not being involved in a crash and finishing in the top 5 after a restart. As Nick Bromberg noted, Busch is listed on the official race report as being in the wreck, Gluck wrote, and he was on the DVP clock, indicating involvement in a wreck. Prior to Moran's comments, Gluck discussed the matter on the Teardown podcast with Jordan Bianchi. "Busch is running 4th or whatever, and then he gets in a wreck, runs into Chastain, loses like 15 spots, Gluck said. "I guess we can talk about that right now. NASCAR puts him back, he gets passed by like half the field." Bianchi laughed. "I asked about this and the explanation was that the rule is you have to maintain your speed, right? Reasonable amount of speed. As was explained to me, had Kyle Busch retained a reasonable amount of speed, he was going to run into Ross Chastain broadside. So, he exercised his good judgment to back off and not make a situation much worse. Busch made it to the front of the race, but unfortunately, Busch had difficulties on resuming P4. Larson, who was in second place at the time, ran out of gasoline during the third overtime restart. Busch had nowhere to go and crashed for good. Busch finished 27th, missing out on his first top 10 since Kansas in May. He's currently 104 points behind Alex Bowman for the 16th and last playoff position, and he'll almost certainly need to win one of the remaining 7 races to qualify. Those cautions at the end of the race and into overtime really worked against us because we were close on fuel, Busch told reporters following the finish. On the last restart, we were 4th when the number 5 Larson ran out of gas just ahead of me, and I didn't have anywhere to go. It's disheartening, but we'll be back next week in Chicago. What do you make of the decision from NASCAR? Was it fair? Was it according to the rule book? Or did they try a sneaky tactic to put Busch in a position that could result in a guaranteed playoff spot, or at least big haul of points? What do you think? But this controversial decision wasn't the only thing that resulted in backlash for Kyle Busch this weekend, as Kyle Busch's miserable season just gets worse with each passing week. Yes, Busch has had some races where he has battled to find pace. He's had races when he wrecked early and was unable to recover. All of that is true, but Sunday's Ally 400 at Nashville Superspeedway must have hurt even more because he was racing 4th, on course to finish in the top 10 for the first time since early May, before crashing in the worst possible way. Kyle Larson, who was in second place on the third overtime restart, ran out of gasoline. Busch had nowhere to go after colliding, placing 27th. According to Kevin Harvick on this week's Happy Hour podcast, things are becoming awful for Busch, who you may want to avoid right now. You know, the first part of the race they ran 30th, 31st, running in the back, Harvick said. Terrible, all the mistakes. Finally, they get it all turned around and they get the track position. They get up front and he gets sent out of the line. He's the guy that gets sent out of the line and into the fence. I don't even know how you fix it at this point because they didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. He is on the worst bad luck cycle of anyone on the circuit right now, and it is bad. Don't go around Kyle Busch right now, because if you want bad luck, don't get around that guy because he is plagued with bad luck. Kyle Busch needs to turn things around quickly with the playoffs looming. Busch, who won 3 races in his first 15 appearances last season, is currently on a 40-race losing skid, the longest of his career. He's on the verge of losing a regular season game for the first time since 2004. Just the feel is not there for me, Busch said before the race at Nashville, via Bob Pockrass of Fox Sports. The more comfortable you are, the more positions you can put yourself in and take chances. I feel like I'm having a hard enough time making laps on my own to ever think about trying to make a pass on someone. Thoughts on this? Is Kyle Busch a bad luck magnet at the moment? Or is he underperforming this season? Or perhaps worse, is this his ceiling now? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.